Welcome to the WhoDooTV's Comic Book Club. That's right, everybody. It's Comic Book Club. We're here talking for the first time ever, and as one of your hosts, as always, I'm Hoosier.
And I'm Moose.
And dude, it's happy to have you back to talk a little bit of comics.
I know it's been a while. It's been a long time. You can see the grays are starting to come in a little bit, right?
On both of ours, man. Like
I know.
2020 did it, dude. It kicked our ass.
Oh yeah, it's been a stressful 2020. Absolutely stressful.
It has been a awfully crazy 2020, and yeah, it's been something, man. It's been something to say the least, and yeah. But today we're going to talk comic. We're going to do a little bit different stuff than what we used to do back in the day.
Yeah.
The show's been doing Get Valiant, and it used to do a lot more comic book reviews and live shows. Kind of got away with that with business, but I figured let's get in depth on a book. Let's talk about a good book that's came out. Let's just enjoy the shit out of it.
Yeah.
And one of the things today we are going to be talking about, I find it to be just a fantastic book. That Texas Blood.
Agreed. I did not know what I was going to feel when I read this book, but I enjoyed it. There's a lot of little things that I took from it that I don't know if other people caught. So I'm curious to dive into this and see what people say.
Right. And then I want to hear what everybody says in the chats. Everybody who's joining us on the chats. You guys rock. I know we got our buddy Scott Bloom. Scott, dude, it's awesome to have you on. Hear you on
hey,
here
buddy.
Chatting. It's awesome. Anybody else who joins the chat, make sure you're writing below. But we're going to get in some in-depth piece on that Texas Blood. We're going to save the spoils for just a moment, and then we'll give you that spoiler alert when we're going to say, pause this, go read the book if you haven't already. There's a link to the book down below. But ultimately, this is that book. And I want to give shout out to the credit where credit's due. Chris Condon and Jacob Phillips killed this book. And
good boys.
Yeah, good guys.
Good.
It's one of their first run with an Image and stuff. So they've been out for a while. This book came out, the trade came out a week ago. And, Jacob Phillips, the son of Sean Phillips, Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, he colors a whole bunch of Criminal. And then Chris has just been a spot on. This like Western noir was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. This book definitely had a Western feel to it. And Jacob, not quite like his dad, but I was digging his style. I won't lie. There was some things that I really enjoyed. I mean, that's as simple as I can put it without getting into spoiler stuff.
Absolutely. And then right now we're going to ask that, if you guys new to this channel, make sure you are punching the subscribe button, all that stuff, leaving comments, engaging with us here so we can get more stuff like this, other shows that come out. So make sure that's something you go ahead and do. And we appreciate any of that stuff that you guys are doing. But yeah, I want to just get into kind of like the first piece of what you thought of this book, and just the first, the first. What did you think about just by looking at it, seeing the covers, seeing the art? I have to say right away, I loved the branding. I loved the trade dressing. That Texas Blood was just really cool. I looked at this book from the beginning and knew I was going to like it just from the covers.
I didn't get to see the covers till the very end, but when I did go through them, they made sense. They had a great feel. They fit nicely with everything. That one right there, that was the only one that was a little odd to me, but it made sense because I read the story.
Mm-hmm.
And while there is no bald, evil-looking villain in the story, it made sense. My favorite is that one right there. I really love that. It's just, it fit the story great. Even that one too, the Welcome To. I really thought that was a great cover too. So the covers I dug. My initial view on the art was fantastic. It's simple but sharp. The colors are vibrant, and you don't think of vibrant when you think of Texas. At least I don't. I've lived in Texas, and I don't think vibrant colors.
You know,
So
I did my time in Texas too, in Lubbock, Little West Texas. Families up in the
okay.
Panhandle, all over. Actually, a little time in El Paso. So been around a little bit of places, and I'd have to say, depends on where you're at. There's going to be some colors.
Yeah, there
But
will be. Yeah.
a lot of it is going to be like this cover in the background, that matted gray. You could watch your dog run away for 3 weeks in Texas.
And you still see the hindquarters running.
You
The dust
still
pluming
see
in the background.
But yeah, ultimately, just like when it comes down, I think it had some really cool art pieces. I think there was some great covers that were shown. And they, like you said, they told a story. Like this one with Sheriff Joe Bob there is just super cool. Seeing the crows around him ready to do it. And it really tells part of the story down the road too.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then just the different pieces with Randy Terrill there, some of the characters we're going to talk about. I thought it had a really cool vibe, really cool pieces, and ultimately had, like I say, a good presentation. So I applaud whoever had the presentation kind of set up, and I think they did a fantastic job when it came to just doing the presentation. That's something I like. So, and on here we got Gomer. Gomer stopping in saying,
"What is up, Gomer?"
Gomer got to read this book as well. Yep, and glad Ryan could make it in here. And Scott Bloom, you liked and subbed a long time ago. Appreciate it, dude. So everybody out there, follow Scott's lead.
I will say one thing about cover number 5. You flashed to it, the all red, and it had the lead character kind of hidden. Cover 5. It really gave me a Here's Johnny kind of vibe. It just kind of gave that hard, just grabbing you, evil feel, just that dark, impending. I can't say it's doom necessarily, but there's just something there that grabbed my attention. Knowing the story already, like I said, I already read the book before I looked at the covers, but seeing that was the one that really stuck out as being haunted. Maybe that's a better word for it. Is it just being haunted?
Yeah, I think that's, we look at that story. That's where we're getting the point of no return, looking down in the basement,
right?
And that's kind of where the story goes. And you know what, guys? If you haven't read this book, make sure you do. Hit pause, come back, join it, go to the link below, buy the book, and we are going to get into a little something we like to call a spoiler. Spoiler alert for y'all. Make sure you've read the book. If not, we're sorry. We cannot take blame for ruining anything for you. That's your fault.
I could give you a quick non-spoilery review before
do
we
it.
dig
Let's
into
hear
it. All
Let's
right.
hear it.
And it's really simple. It's 3 phrases. An older, probably too old sheriff, a small town with history, and a descent into madness.
Okay.
Pretty much wraps up the book.
Since I come from New Mexico, which I feel like is to a point, very similar to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, the old sheriff on the last end of his day, and I would say New Mexico is the state name is called the Land of Enchantment, but we used to call it the Land of Entrapment.
Okay.
And to me, it is the Land of Entrapment, going back to what you ran away from, going back to who you used to be before you ran away. Going back to the Land of Entrapment, right? And I think you could do this book to a degree. Instead of that Texas Blood, you could have called it Land of Entrapment and put a New Mexico Z sign, and I think it would have fit very well. But yeah, I do. I'm right there with you. That's a good one. And I want to get in and talk about the characters. I think that was one thing that Chris did really well, is he brought in some cool characters to this book. And you see some of them in the covers. You're going to see Sheriff Joe Bob, and you're going to see Randy Terrill. And you mentioned a little bit on Sheriff Joe Bob. He's this old sheriff. He's been around the block. Just had a 70th birthday. And he's an interesting character. And I don't know what to say about him sometimes besides saying well.
I loved the feel that they gave Joe Bob. And it was one of those things I really didn't pick up on the wells, but not initially like in the first book, but I started to pick him up a little bit, and I started to read him totally different because I put the well in there. I really started after I picked up on that, I really started feeling the characters. I slowed down their speech patterns in my mind, and it felt like Texas, a little bit of a drawl, and you're just in no hurry to get nowhere. So why rush your speed? Just slow it down. Well, enjoy the book. That's the way I felt the whole time as I was reading every character. And even Randall, before he came to Texas, he was a faster speech pattern. But then as he got there and he started doing his thing, I felt his speech pattern slowing down as he was sinking back into, like you said, the entrampment.
Right.
And just those little things, the little nuances in the speech pattern, and you start to feel these characters, which is huge. You want a good review, you want a good book to come out and pop, you got to make the senses feel something else. I mean, I'm reading something, and you and I, we talk pretty fast, but it made us feel these characters, and for me, it slowed my reading down. I felt the characters when they spoke, when they acted, all of that.
And that's exactly it. Joe Bob did have that, right? You did get the feel of the Twain. You did get to see some of the Texan accents that came out, and the well just kind of flowed, and it was interesting. It was great. And with this book, it had an interesting draw with this. The first issue was basically a Sheriff Joe Bob one shot.
One shot, exactly.
It did confuse me a little bit when I started reading all the other ones. I had to go back to issue number 1. Did I miss something? Did number 1 tie in? Or was it seriously just a one shot? Even though they talk about a brother's consciousness, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. But then you had the casserole dish that Joe was looking for. And Joe starts off this book like looking for trouble almost. His 70th birthday, and Mama wants her casserole dish to make him a dinner, and he just goes through kind of some hell trying to run this down from some family friends, and witnesses some horrific stuff. And I think Gomer says it. This book at that final last panel, if you don't just immediately love it, you know what I mean? It's a great medium, comic books, and I agree, it's a great debut. And to hear that this book was initially supposed to be a screenplay, so it was an adaptation.
Made sense.
It was an adaptation.
I wrote it down in my notes. I wrote it down in my notes. This feels like a show or some type of ongoing or something like that. I didn't get the feel of just a comic book. It felt like that. But to me, in that first issue that you referenced, that whole thing about Joe Bob, I really think he does kind of feel an ineptness, if you will. Like he is over the hill. Like he's 70. He's like, why haven't I retired yet? Why am I still doing this? And then it seems like in every turn, he's a step short. He's a step shy. He's got to go get this. Passes by somebody's house. There's trouble. And it all wraps up at the end of the book when all this stuff happens. And without giving up too much, with all this stuff happens, and again, he's a day late and $1 short. He's unable to solve anything through that whole book, and I think it shows his insecurity about his feeling about how he does the job, which is interesting because I think while it focuses on other characters, you see Joe Bob start to come into his own throughout the rest of the book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the first one just shows like the things that can happen on any given day. That can happen. You could be Mayberry up until one point, and this Ashbury County, and shit hits the fan, and it hits it quick. And so I think that brought a great point. I mean, just Sheriff Joe Bob is kind of like the core of this. If you think of this as a long run, I could see, a couple arcs going with Randy Terrill, and then I could see another another arc type of wider arc of happening with another crime type of thing that's happening. And Joe Bob's still the center of it, but it's a new crime that happens, a new character set that comes around. And so that's what's really great. It made you really like Joe Bob from the beginning. And the first number one, it definitely hooked. It kind of tricked some people by being that one shot, but it still had the same vibe. It still had that same just grittiness to it as well. And then in issue 2, we get introduced to Randy Terrill. Randy Terrill, like, I could relate to Randy so freaking well that it was amazing. I mean, I moved away from the hometown that I grew up with, and almost the character change because of geographic happened. Sometimes it's that entrapment that I talked about. Sometimes it's that, just being in a new place, a new thing. And, he's been called Drama Queen or Drama King, the Drama Boy by his girlfriend. I don't know if he really said where he lived at before, but he was out of Texas. And there is some things that's funny. She's like, I've been to Austin before. I almost moved to Austin. And so some funny pieces happening there. And that's so funny. He's like, Austin's not really Texas. And I don't know how many times I've ever said that in my life when talking about Texas and stuff. But this guy, he moves there and things change. Or he moves away and he has to come back because his brother's died.
Right.
And his brother gets killed. But he doesn't know that at first, though, either. But he comes back to this town, and it's an interesting piece there. And I like the way he shows like the image of his brother at the house, and then he gets a phone call basically saying he's dead, come home. And he wants to go at it alone because he knows back home is a totally different creature, and he doesn't want the girlfriend that to not know his past.
Right. Exactly what he said. It's a different world. It's just a different species altogether. And yeah, it's an evil. It's the dark side of him. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there. I think everybody at a certain age wants to leave home. They need to leave home. Some because of the bad that they've done. Some just need to get away from just their house in and of itself. And the first time that you come back to your house, it's only a fraction of what our main guy here is going through. He doesn't want his girlfriend to come because the darkness that eventually enveloped him was real, and it took him, and he did not want his girlfriend to see that. Yeah,
he didn't want it to see it. There's past there. There's past girlfriends. There's, just past environment where, you even get this guy at the hotel right here who knows who he is. I know who you are. Don't bring that stuff back here. His brother and him they were some interesting characters, and they would have a little bit of mischief. They were derelicts, or may you say, of the county that were going nowhere fast. And it probably was the best thing for Randy to leave.
And he got clean. He got sober. Yeah, he got clean, sober. He moved away, changed his life. He was a writer. He was going somewhere. He was building a life. And the only way that could have happened is out of that small town.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really it. I mean, he gets tied into old relationships. He gets tied into running back into one of his old girlfriends. And then he also gets the local drug dealers get back involved with his life, and he has to really battle to get out of where he's at, or to basically understand and avenge his brother's death. But it's a little bit more because his brother's got debts, his brother's got issues that they want him to pay. And ultimately it comes back to Sheriff Joe Bob, who saves the day, figures it out. But a buck short, $1 late, right, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, day late, $1 short. Yeah, he actually shows up on time to keep him from getting killed. But I did have something I wanted to point out to you, and in regards to Sarah, who's the old-time ex-girlfriend who shows up in his hotel room. I find that interesting. One, that the guy at the hotel who says, "Don't you create any problems. I want no issues, no problems." He's the guy that lets her in. Right? And then turn right around, and who's the next person to come visit him? Well, it's one of the drug lords, one of the drug dealer guys.
One of the muscle. Yeah.
Obviously, somebody let him know exactly what room. Either it's Sarah that let him know, or it's the guy down there at the hotel who says he doesn't want any problems that let him know, because
Yeah.
Lo and behold, as we progress into the end of book 2, he takes him out to this other guy's to the drug dealer's basically his backyard. And so you can see that even though you've left and you've made something in this story here, it's almost like the town's not going to let it go. They never will.
And it is the small town. Everybody knows your name. Everybody knows your business. And the Sarah girl, like, there's the instance where it's like she genuinely cares about Randall, though, because she's actually the one that goes to Sheriff Joe Bob to let him know that he was taken. And so it really gets to that front desk clerk at the hotel, where there's something a little bit more. There's something a little bit more sinister there. There's a lot more going on. But again, it is that little town. You know who came in and who was at the diner where there was an issue, and who said what? That Randall, did you hear Randall Terrill's back in town? Oh, somebody killed, his brother, and it's just where that is. And just the connections of where this all connects, and the easy vibe of seeing that it was the drug dealer when it was a little bit more. And, and it really turns out to be sour when you figure out that it was the ex-girlfriend who was running in with Randall's brother after Randall left because she wished it was him.
Yep. That comes to light. And then, of course, as you continue down that storyline, I mean, it opens up even more and more. Excuse me.
Yeah, it opens up so much.
I mean, even in that in the middle of book 2, when they're talking about how she's got the bandage on her face, who obviously broke her nose or what have you, and it's the drug dealer who, just at the mention of this guy, just because they were together for a short period of time, ends up beating her up. Yeah. And I mean, and the one thing, and I'll throw this out there, maybe I'll save it. I'll save it towards the end, because it's definitely something, as we put everything together in the story, something I definitely want your feedback from. But I think we got other things. If we're still on characters, I'm trying to think here. Who else did I have written down that I enjoyed? Obviously, the drug dealer. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I didn't write down his name.
Hunter.
I found him almost to be perfectly on the spot. He could be a small-time drug lord in little Ambrosia, Texas. He could be in Amarillo, Texas. He could be a big deal in Dallas, Texas. You could plug and play that guy almost anywhere in Texas, and he just fit with the bolo tie, the black shirt. I mean, he was a Texas bad guy. And maybe it was just the black shirt that did it for me, but in all Westerns, the bad guy wore black, right?
Pretty much everybody but Johnny Cash, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a little different.
He's probably the bad guy too. I do think it is an interesting vibe of that character, and I do remember time they would call it being in Irving, but this guy had he did have a odd presentation, right? He reminded me of one of the characters that was from what's that called? Prison Break. The kind of the Russian guy, Adabuzi, I think, or something like that was his name. And he reminds me so much of him. He's got that slicked back hair. He's just greasy and nasty as can be, and just plays this vibe. Then you got, Detective Flores, who she's thrown in there. I think that she could end up growing on as the story goes, because she's the new transfer cop that came in. She's, hey, quit talking. I'm right here. Like, quit acting like I'm not a person here. And she throws a great vibe there. I dig that to a degree that there's this meshing that's happening still here of these characters. So it's playing really well on character building.
Yes. The character building was solid. Again, going back to what you said earlier about this being a screenplay, you got that feel. You did. Even with that little bit right there, you could tell with her how she was folded in, brought along for the drive along to go visit the bad guys. That all fit together just like a screenplay, and it fit very well in the comic book because you really felt she was part of the story. Even though she had a small bit to play, she was important enough to be brought in and and be presented in that way, in that version. Because without another body there, he's absolutely right. He could have been in a world of trouble, overpowered and outmatched.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really playing a great piece there with the characters. And then, Randy's he's getting angry and angry, and you see this develop as the story goes along. As he goes in, he's already uptight because he's coming into town, and just witnessing all the bad things. And then then he learns about the death. And then he has the issue with the diner. Then he learns about the death. Then he learns about his ex-girlfriend. Then he goes off and gets beat up by the local, local group of, drug runners.
Right.
And then he kind of goes back home.
He goes home for the first time, yeah.
And then he starts getting these memories and just really wondering if they were the same memories he once remembered. What was it really? Was it his brother that had the issues, or was it something that kind of took him in and grabbed him further into the issue? And you see this, and then he starts to totally alter who he is. He starts going back to old ways or his brother's ways that we'll learn more, I'm sure. And he takes care of this guy that took him in at first and takes him down to the basement. And that's right opportune time for the ex-girlfriend or the girlfriend to just come unannounced. Very, very odd feeling there.
I could see
girlfriends.
For me, it was almost a descent into madness is kind of what I felt with that. You could feel, and there's something artistically I'll point to here in a little while, but you could feel as the story went along, just in the way that he presented himself, even artistically, the visualization of the character slowly start slipping. And when the girlfriend came, when he went out, got drunk for the first time, came back, and his girlfriend showed up, you could see just panel by panel the slow slipping into a madness that was deep and dark for him. I mean, he blows up. He blows up at his girlfriend and now ex-girlfriend. I mean, it's a slippery slope. And when he went back home, that was just one more added stick on the piles of weight of logs that was on his back, and it slowly broke him. Just slowly broke him and drove him into madness and to doing something that he definitely shouldn't have done. Yeah, it does have you relate where you would be in that picture, where you would go within, a murdered death. And yeah, you just see the guy slip and you see it happening and you see it, it's kind of hard. It's like a train wreck. You kind of don't want to watch it. You don't want to see this guy go through it, but yet you still understand and you still have empathy for him and that anger and madness to it. And that's where I think Chris did a really good job in writing this book. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Because he's making you enjoy this person. He's making you side with him. And I think that was one of the really fun parts with it. Then you get Joe Bob's humor next to it, but well, what I found to be interesting in that panel of when he went out and got drunk, when he first came to and realized what he did, there was shock. There was a little bit of horror, but it went away quick as he tried to dispose of the body. He's like you said, he's numb feeling. He doesn't feel anything. Yeah. That is a portion of madness. There is no more feeling, no more empathy for the things that you did. And from that point forward, there was zero empathy. He had lost it. And that was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I loved that portion of him and that descent. It was quick, bit by bit still, but as soon as he came home, it was over. Done deal. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you saw the writing on the wall and everybody kind of knew it. It was amazing how you look at that and see it's like amazing how he actually got out of there. Right. Yeah. It's amazing. And sometimes that's what it takes, right? You think about it reminds you of the thing of somebody going to the military to pretty much save their life to get out of the hell that they were in when there wasn't much of a chance, right? I mean, it's, that kind of to a similar degree, the story of an inner city where inner city kids, he's a victim to the gangs, and it's you're either going to get killed by it or you're going to join it. And
Sometimes that becomes the violence. Sometimes that becomes that Texas blood that just is in you and it's around you depending on the environment. So, yeah. But I mean, ultimately it comes down to this fine, you know, to the final bit of this book, where they realize that it was the Sarah, was the ex-girlfriend from high school. And you realize that it was her, that she did it, and that she broke her nose by the drug guy who killed him, and that he actually gets killed. You know, Randy takes care of business of all of them. And it really is a interesting aspect of they're going to go off into the sunset to a degree, the two of them, one for killing Randy's brother, Randy for killing everyone else. But is there more to this Randy Terrill story? Is there, you know, I feel like there's a lot more, there's a ton more Joe Bob story to be told.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Ton more Joe Bob story. But what's left with the Randy Terrill story?
You know, I don't know, for both of them too, for Sarah and Randy, they're going off to county, which means they're going to be tried. They're going to be going off to a state or federal prison for murder. And it's curious as I think about it from a law enforcement perspective. Can you call that a crime of passion? You know, Randy's been led to believe, and I truly believe that Sarah purposely led him to believe that drug dealer was the one that killed his brother. Right. And she makes mention, she takes advantage back in book 2, she takes advantage of his chivalrous type of, you know, Southern Texas charm that, you know, there's a lot of Texas things that are off, but one thing they are very chivalrous, very polite, very mannered and such. But she takes advantage of that. And she leads him on a story about her nose getting busted. He starts to say, well, he's starting to make these connections about what she's saying and starts thinking that the drug lord was the one that pulled the trigger. And this whole time she's like, no, stop. You don't know, you know, and I don't buy it because she's not very, she doesn't sell me on that whole bit, but yeah. All the way down, he's led to believe the wrong thing.
But I think there was a moment where she tried to tell him. She tried to say it, and he was just so furious, so angry at the situation, at all the stuff going on, that he kept cutting her off too. So it's part of there was an interesting dialogue that those two had when it's hitting the, you know, the peak of this story, and you know that something's going to happen one way or another, but I do think you're right. I do think that there was some piece there of her wanting the other guy to be killed. And
yeah, I mean, she knew she was the one that killed the brother, but she wanted this drug dealer taken out too. She wanted them both gone. And that's kind of what I felt, is she set up Randy to take this guy out. She knew that if she pushed the right buttons, that he was going to fall off and he was going to just spiral, which he did, completely spiral.
Yeah. And that was the big piece. That was the big turning point on it, is feeling the death and kind of coming to the conclusion of who it was with Kuntner, who's the guy who did it. And that was the ultimate piece there. And Joe Bob couldn't save the day. He couldn't get there and prevent more harm from happening. And ultimately a bunch of people dying, and then a couple other people's lives being kind of changed forever within that. So
Yep. Even the Astor story. I think we've hit everything on this book, but I want to bring up and transition, if you will, a little bit into the art of this book. Some of the things that I want to know if you felt. A lot of a good story is, like I was saying in the beginning, having your senses feel something else. So having your eyes feel tension, you know, having the words have weight that reduce you down to a little bit of a drawl. You see artistically, not in the cover picture here, but you'll see artistically a lot of lines. Shadowing is most of it. But I felt, as you saw the slip into madness and the tension areas, you get a lot of dark scribbles horizontally, or I should say vertically, throughout most of those scenes, which created a ton of tension. Not that there was necessarily needed to be tension, but as you go through the book, you see those heavy lines over the character that's feeling the most of this tension. And it drew my eyes to that because my eyes again felt that tension in the book. And as you get towards the end of this first trade, those last scenes, those darkest scenes of murder, those lines were the heaviest, most jagged scribbles. And I don't know, did you feel that, or am I just looking too deep into it?
I to a degree, I think that might be too deep into it. I know that there was parts where it was, where it was dark and gloomy, but it was also dark and gloomy. You're in a basement. You're at midnight. You're late at night at a dance hall club. I mean, I do feel like they showed that red, like the scenes got a lot more red and a lot more black and darker. But I do think that there's scenes where he's, frustrated and upset. Or actually, I say that, and then I look at it here. I don't know if you'll be able to see my screen.
It's a little bright. Bring it closer.
But you'll see in the top, the top left corner that you see that the first panel's red. He's starting to get it, right? And then it goes back to the regular. So it's like the anger is hitting. So, I mean, maybe you're onto something.
It's not necessarily the shading. It almost is like a frantic, hard scribble. Like the lines you see in some of the shading, it's softer lines, right? But in this, they're all connected and it's very jagged, almost sharp like teeth. And whether the colors get darker, it almost seems like there's more and more of those jagged, sharp lines. And to me, as I read through it the first time, I could feel that tension. My eyes were seeing it, but it was the second read that I really started seeing these things start to pop. I mean, I saw it the first time when the two sat on the bed, when Sarah and Randy sat on the bed. I could see some of that tension. And then you saw it heavy when he went back home. And I don't know, it just felt like almost like in this picture here, you see that those they're not sharp, but it almost feels like heat pressing down. So it's like the artist is trying to show you or make you feel with your eyes what's going on in the scene. I mean, this is a small town. There's nothing really green here, but it's the heat that causes that. Maybe I'm digging too deep into it. But that's just some of the things that I saw. And I didn't know if anybody else, maybe somebody else out there saw this and could back me up on it. I don't know.
Yeah. I think sometimes we might see things and interpret it different than what it was mean. It could just be his style. Cause I felt like, Jacob, who's done quite a bit of the color work on like Kill or Be Killed, some of the backup work on that, or some of the Criminal, that is kind of like a style of his as well, is the coloring style. Because I do feel like we see some of it, but we see it in a lot of things. So, but I do think, he does have a certain use of panels, of colors of his palette that really kind of adjust and change things around. Because at times you can see some certain, heavy lines in certain pieces, even in this scene here, where there's the different elements. But then you get to this scene where it does give you that dark, the red, the blacks, just kind of like something's happening. And of course, you're going to get the blood red everywhere when the blood's out. And even there's the tile but I mean, I loved Jacob's art. I really dug Jacob's art. I think I dug it too.
Yeah.
I see him like he's one of my, his dad's one of my favorite artists. I love Sean Phillips and I love what that's done. But I can see Jacob developing and keep going, and he's already just got a great instinct for storytelling in his panels and his framing and in his scenes, right? So I think it's done well to have great storytelling within the scenes that he's drawing. So
I think one thing that he excelled at was the facial expressions. He really put a lot. I mean, he's not an artist that's going to be like taking a picture. That's just not going to happen. But what he did with the lines and what he did with the facial expressions really drove home a lot of what the characters were going through.
Yeah.
You could really see that. That really popped for me too. The furrowing of the brows and the squint of the eyes.
But I mean, really, when you get to the core of this, though, this story, and just that connection of going back to the place that made you, and getting back to that core. Like I dig that connection, that basis of this story, of this what we're getting from it. And I dug it. I could see it going in many places, and I could see this Texas Blood being something else, even if it continues to be a Joe Bob series with multiple different arcs that are about different crimes that happen. I think it's good, especially in this style of storytelling, with the throwing in of a little bit of humor. And it is what it is, and I think that's what makes it fun. So, I mean, what you, I guess, score it up. What do you think? Where are you looking at with this book for yourself?
What are we going off of, a 5 or a 10?
A 5.
5. All right. I really enjoyed the art and the colors from the things that I saw. Like I said, I'm probably diving a little too deep into it, but I definitely, it's a solid 4, because of the tension that I felt. Maybe even, I think 4 is about good. A little better than 4, but I wouldn't go a 4.25. I wouldn't break it down there. But like I said, the use of colors and the tension that the artist brought to the page, I thought was fantastic. It was something that I enjoyed, and I enjoyed looking at it. Even though I was looking for some of those connections, I enjoyed looking at it and seeing how it interacted with the story. Solid 4 on the art. The story was great. I'd give that a solid 4 as well. Solid 4.
Yeah. I think when you look at this story and the depth that it told, I think it was really well up there, and it used this medium really well, and the comic book medium, which makes everything fun, in my opinion. Again, dug the art. It did everything that you would want an artist to do within this. It didn't overly like wow you with some realism, but it told the story in the comic book medium very well.
Very well.
And that's where, I'm looking at both of it across the board, the pairing of it. I'm gonna give it a 4.5. I think it was a very solid. I think 4.5 is an A when you're going off of the 100% scale. It's a good solid 90% A. That's how I feel about it. It was one of those books that, as it grows, as it gets, I'm going to get the hardcover, put it on the shelf along with Criminal and Killer Be Killed behind me, with some of the other books that I quite enjoy very much. So 4.5, that's where I'm at. I feel like you got to get this book if you like it. If you like crime, if you like westerns, if you like noir stories, it's going to be something that you should go get. So.
Absolutely.
Yep. And that's where we're going to be at with this. We're going to continue covering books like this from time to time, every other month, once a month. However, we're going to do some right now on Twitter. We have a poll about a couple books that we're looking and thinking to do. And we're hoping that everybody might put into that survey. But I think right now the leader that we got going on is going to be Year Zero. Benjamin Percy, who I really like Benjamin Percy's art. This is AWA, Artists, Writers, and Artisans, Upshot Publishers. So I think it is a new up-and-coming publisher that's got lots of good creators on a lot of good books. But I know Volume 2 has got a WhoDooTV favorite artist of Juan Jose Reap, but he's in the Volume 2. But Volume 1, we're going to go and take a look at that, crack that. And I think by doing the math right, that looks like it might be February 3rd that we're going to review this. So
Sweet.
Pick up this book, read this book so you can join in the conversation.
I've gotten a lot of people that have pointed that book saying this is a great read. They picked up the floppies and read it. And there you go. Yeah, you're already ready to go.
Yeah. Highly recommended to get things like that. Get in there and read that stuff. So, but yeah, I'm glad that others have said it's good too. So, but I'm going to figure it out on my own.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And make sure you guys are subscribing, Make sure you're into this. Make sure you're watching it. Share it if you can. Tell people to read a book and send them our way, and so we can all talk about it. And comment whatnot below, and we'll get you on here to talk some books with us from time to time, and we'll run from there. So
absolutely.
Well, we appreciate you all from watching. Subscribe, like. Moose, thanks for joining on, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right.
Much appreciated.
We'll see y'all.